Now, all right, we are back. This is Red Clay.
Hey,
And Will Hammond. Good to see you again, Will. And we are black in the Bay.
black in the face.
This is a podcast where we explore social, political, and philosophical issues through the African American lens. We'll hit some current events, have some fun, and get deep on some far-reaching issues. We invite everybody to listen. You don't have to be black to listen, but if you have a black friend, relative, or loved one, and we're curious about the black perspective, it's time to put on your headphones, or you're on YouTube right now as you're watching us. Check out Black in the Bay. I think this is our first one since COVID-19, the first one of 2020. So, been a lot of stuff going on, man.
Man, I mean, I remember when we were trying to work out like another time to do this, and then all of a sudden, boom, just like from day to night, this all happened. So,
Yeah.
but before we start, I wanted to play sort of the theme of what this show is going to be about. So, if you want to listen to this,
Absolutely. Let's hear it.
Doing all that I can to stay. Oh, but when I look around and I see what's being done to my kind, every day I'm being hunted as prey. My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough struggle. I just wanna live. God protect me.
Wow.
I just wanna live.
when I think of that, man,
Yeah. Did you write that? Who's that from?
this is a young man. I'm trying to see his name. Keydron Bryant. So if you go to @Keydron Bryant on Instagram or wherever he's at,
Yeah.
you'll see this song, and simple as that. I just want to live, man. We try to figure out how do we maneuver through these like crazy situations in this world, man.
Mm-hmm. Wow, Keydron Bryant. I'll remember that. Now we'll put a link to that. It's powerful. And I tell you, we were talking just before I cut the thing on. Everyone is having such an emotional reaction. If it isn't Arbery, Ahmaud Arbery, who basically died as if he were a slave running from the lynchers in the South. I mean, you're hearing about somebody getting shot, with a shotgun, two white men running after him. If that wasn't bad enough, then you got George Floyd, who in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and a cop, puts his knee on his chest and literally kills him. So everyone's been exploding on that.
You know what's crazy, man? I was trying to figure out, like, why is everyone... Because I had 2 breakdowns today. Like, I was literally, like, bawling just thinking about all this stuff today. And, and I was telling my wife that I didn't tell her, and I told her after the fact when I started crying again.
Wow, yeah, I hear you.
I think what's happening is we have suffered this really kind of crazy grief with the COVID thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, it sort of hit us, like, kind of clocked us sideways, right? And now we're sort of used to this kind of new normal. And all of a sudden, this thing happens.
Yeah.
So now we're hit this way with the same old. And we're sort of like, wait, I thought that was over. I thought Daddy wasn't going to hit us anymore. Like, I thought, what I'm saying? Like, it's sort of that mental sort of grief or that mental, we're starting to not get used to this stuff anymore.
Yeah, it's become the new normal. I mean, I totally feel what you're saying. I mean, we're used to the routine of things, and COVID-19 has totally disrupted that. There are folks who have lost their jobs as a result of that, or they're told by their bosses, I don't care if you're afraid, you got to show to work because my money is worth more than, your life or the life of, someone else.
Right.
And we already know that more African Americans are dying than any other race regarding COVID-19. And a lot of that has to do with economics. So you've got that going on, plus the same old BS, which is cops mistreating black folks, or the barbecue Beckys of the world still calling cops because they're annoyed.
Yeah.
So, emotionally, yeah, go ahead.
And it's what's crazy to me is, and someone put a quote. It's a quote by, I think it was D.L. Hughley put a quote by a famous person. I can't remember who it was, but they said, the fear is really the imagination inside the white guy or the white person.
Yeah.
And it's really, I mean, because people say, "Oh, I'm afraid I'm going to get killed," and this and that. We're not doing anything.
Right. You're absolutely right.
What are you really afraid of? You're afraid of the internal fear that you have for us as a people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a wonderful book that I'm reading. I've got to I'll dig it up a little bit later. I think it's called Slavery by Any Other Name, and it talks about the history of the post Civil War and how the Deep South sort of reinstitutionalized slavery through the criminal justice system, basically arresting a black individual and then they sign him off to work at a factory so they can pay off the bail that was paid off by somebody else. But basically, the point is, if you have a Deep South and, let's say the white man has been enslaving, all sorts of folks, black folks, and then all of a sudden slavery is over, and then you're in an environment where you have so many black individuals surrounding you, it's easy to be afraid, but it's based on your own guilt. I mean, it's based on the institution that you placed. I mean, I don't, I'm not here to put blame on, white folks or whatever. I mean, I just want to live my life. But I think that a lot of white folks who have this in their mind may feel, oh, you may want to cause me harm because of, institutional racism or prejudice or something like that. We just want to live our lives. We just want to work, support our wives, our husbands, and our families, and just live our lives. We don't really care.
And go bird watching.
Right. And go bird watching and not get bit by a dog. I mean, I don't have any problem with the dude. What's his name? Carpenter. Whatever the dude's last name, Cooper. He just asked a woman, hey, can you leash your dog? And apparently she was triggered, and used the. I don't know if that's a proverbial card that some white women, I should say, liberal, conservative white women, because all white women don't think this way. But conservative white women, they have this cart in the back of their head. Hey, if you cause me problems, I'm going to hold my phone and I'm going to call the cops on you.
Right.
As if that's the whip that will push us black men away.
Right. And it's crazy because I think about like the degrees of where that came from. Like I think about like, why did she go from 0 to 80 in terms of her acceptance of his directive? Like, please, put the dog on the leash.
Yeah.
And she could have easily like, oh, sorry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, most people I know or went to school with that went to, Wesleyan or Brown or wherever would have the subtle common sense to say, oh, here's another human being telling me I need to be aware of this situation because I'm in the brambles or I'm whatever situation.
Yeah.
But she came from somewhere that said instantly, he's a threat.
Yeah, I had this conversation with Norman, and I tried to bring him on, but he's busy. We had a conversation a while, I think it was a year ago, and I had brought up the fact that there is what I'm going to call, and it's controversial, whitey mentality. And everybody doesn't have that. Jordan Peele in Get Out, that great movie, there are white folks who are very, very liberal. They're woke, we would call them woke white. And, but of course, there's some subtle issues with that as well, and he addresses that. But then there are folks who are not woke at all, and they really don't care, and whitey mentality has nothing to do with pigmentation. There's nothing wrong with being white. But there is something wrong with being whitey. There's something wrong with this entitlement of, things need to be the way that I want them to be. I don't want an 11-year-old girl selling water on my block, or I don't want this neighbor, here. I don't need to see black folks, barbecuing. So, and I'm going to call the cops on that. And I think that there are some people who look at change or look at people who are different, and they say, oh, that's interesting. Let me find out more about this individual or this
Right.
culture. And then there are folks who push away from differences. They're like, oh, no, I want things to be the way that I want them to be. And
I
that's
want
when
them
you
to
have the
be the
problems.
same. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what's crazy? So I have a crazy story because you know, my wife is French, and so, but she comes from a whole kind of other mental thing. She worked in disadvantaged schools. She worked with, you know, a lot of folks of color, and so she doesn't have one kind of any kind of bone in her body to think about like entitlement or whatever.
Yeah.
But she, I mean, but it's hard for her because sometimes she doesn't see it, so I have to kind of
Will, you still there?
explain to her.
Yeah, yeah.
So we went. So we went to a wedding in Ireland, and I was. It was kind of glamping, so we were gonna all glamping outside, and then the wedding party was all inside this big house, really amazing house in the
Mhm.
country. So my wife goes in. She goes, "Okay, I'm gonna go say hi to the wedding party and the mom and everybody else. You can go put your stuff away and then come meet us."
Mhm.
So I took all my shirts out, my suit, everything. So I go walk to the house, and I walk in and I see the the bride's mom,
Mhm.
and so she comes up to me, she's smiling, and she says, "Are the cars ready?"
Mm. Are the cars ready?
So she thought I was the taxi driver,
Oh,
or
I see.
she thought I was the person who was organizing
Mhm.
the taxis to take them to the pub.
Yeah.
Because when I walked in, I was like, "Oh, hey," and my wife instantly turns and says, "Oh, this is my husband, Will." And her face, the mom's face, turned from like shock to like, and I was like, I didn't really trip on it, you know, because
Mhm.
that's not me. I'm not that kind of person that, you know, I'm in Ireland. I got to do what the Irish do, right? I'm
Yeah,
not going
yeah.
to turn this into a huge, oh, because I'm black, you know. So I was like, oh, ha, 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 ha.
Yeah.
You know, but it stuck with me because I was thinking, here's this woman who was trying her best to be like engaging with me,
Mhm.
but she thought I was the taxi driver.
Yeah, and I hear about the white man's burden, but I think there's a thing of the black man's burden or the black person's burden. How do
Right.
we deal with that? I mean, how do we, because we're always asked to conduct our emotions, especially black men. I talked about, I wrote a play, Foreman in Paris, that we had a actor, a guy named Barry Graves, who's really talented, and he's a big guy. And we
Mm.
had a problem getting anger out of him because he had been conditioned, he had been taught at a very young age, hey, make sure you're not threatening to society. Make sure,
Wow.
you tone yourself down. Don't be angry. Don't be the angry black man because that can get you killed. And
Wow.
and
That's crazy.
and it's when we have folks who, let's say, mistaking you for the taxi driver or whatever, it's up to us to say, oh, everything's going to be okay, or I understand.
Hmm.
And that's, that could be problematic as well. I mean, I don't know how you felt personally.
I mean, I'm a teacher at heart, so I think for me it was just about educating this person.
Yeah.
But it does get tiring, and I think that that's where it comes down to the grief and to the all the stuff that we're feeling right now is
Hmm.
that we've been trying for so many years to educate our allies, educate whoever else is out there, the young people.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, we have issues. I mean, we have issues with young black men saying whatever. You know, like I don't care, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
We need those kids to be educated so that they go out in the world and they can protect themselves.
Right.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
you
And
know,
it's
when
it.
this going on for so long,
Hmm.
you just get tired, man. I am thoroughly exhausted by seeing all this crap happening.
Yeah, and it's unfair to ask. You know, you and I are of a generation where we sort of, I mean, I grew up. I think I told you I grew up watching Roots. I think you watched Roots as well, and
But,
we grew up, with the Do the Right Thing and the emergence of rap. So I'm sure the millennials. This is new to the millennials when they hear, like the dude Trayvon Martin that happened in Florida, and
right.
Oscar Grant and all of this stuff. I mean, they weren't around when Rodney King was killed or when Yusuf Hawkins back in New York in the 80s. So we're conditioned, and maybe we're fatigued by it because it's an emotional thing, and oh my God, it's happening again. I wonder how the millennial blacks feel about dealing with this, because this is really their first time. And it's like, oh my God, this is what's happening. And you said, as an educator, teaching black men to conduct themselves so that they don't get killed.
Right.
And one can say, well, that's unfair. Why should I have to conduct my emotions? Well, it is unfair, but that's life. And welcome to America. This is what it is.
Well, and I actually I saw some stuff being posted today, and again, part of my tears and my anguish was thinking about my friends and like who I associated with.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very blessed to go to a small private school where I had a large, diverse group of kids who I hung out with.
Yeah.
Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever. And I told my one friend, who I said, if it wasn't for you and all these other friends, I don't know where I'd be right now. I don't know if I would be another statistic, because those guys protected me and kept me in really creative environments, the studio, or performing in a band, or being in the theater, doing theater stuff, or doing music stuff, or like there are all these moments I think about, like, wow, I could have just been randomly walking down the street and got stopped by a cop.
Yeah, and we've talked, you and I, we met each other through theater, and I think there are folks who downplay art, and I think the job to be done with art is not just to create, but also to understand. I mean, art opens up the gateway of understanding different cultures and how different people live. And maybe it's a sort of a liberal agenda, for those who are conservative. But you really get to understand people who are different than who you are, and to be more open. And also in times like this, you can actually lean on your art. It's a form of expression, because, what do you do when you have all of this negativity, whether it's be the president talking crap, or, COVID-19, you don't know if you're going to drop dead, while just going to the grocery store, or if you're going to be stopped by a cop. That emotionally just affects you. There have been all sorts of articles about people dreaming, people having strange dreams. So you need to emote, you need to express yourself, you need to connect to your friends who really know you. And thank goodness we're in the art industry. You're creating music. You've got Blacklandia, and I think you have another album coming out. So you've been busy.
But I mean, and I got this quote out because it reminds me of me. I'm very careful of how I act in front of my wife and kids, because I don't want them to see me always in stress mode,
Mm-hmm.
And what's happening right now is causing me to like go away and work it out, or talk to my therapist, and then come back to them in a more happier place, because again, my wife doesn't like seeing me stressed out, and my kids don't understand it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to bother telling them, but this quote said, James Baldwin, to be black and conscious in America is to be in a constant state of rage. And I think that's sort of me right now. I'm sort of like, I'm always living my life sort of in this like inner rage. And I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be always angry and, cranky black man, whatever. But man, it's getting harder and harder.
Yeah, it just listening to you talk. So when I was a kid, I got mugged when I was a kid, and I was an only child at the time. And my father was so angry. This is in Washington D.C. in the '70s, and there were a lot of crazy things going on.
Yeah.
I remember him having a shotgun. The one and only time I ever saw him with a gun. He had a shotgun sitting on the foot of the bed, with just tears in his eyes, because he wanted to kill the individual who had, did what they did to me. Wow. And black rage. I mean, black rage is a real thing. And of course, we're told, hey, don't be angry, or they call it get black. Don't get black on me or whatever. I mean, there are times when I'm in the office, working, and I have a wonderful working environment. The DA's office, they treated me very good. But there are times, as I think it just happens in life where you may be a little upset, and I have to tell myself, me being upset is a little different from someone else. Let's say a white woman or a I don't know, a Latino woman or an Asian guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because people can tense up, people can be like, oh, there's a sense of threat. And so we have to, I think that's the black man's burden. We have to conduct our emotions so that we're not seen as threatening, and also so that we don't, our lives aren't threatened. Because a cop can say, well, I'm justified. I thought he was going to kill me. Even if you don't have a weapon. So,
but I've told this story before where, say again?
No, go ahead. You're echoing.
Oh, sorry. I was teaching in San Francisco, and I guess I had expired license plate, and I got stopped in the Mission, like right near the elbow room where the elbow room used to be.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was a rookie cop, and I guess there was a senior cop there who was telling him, "Here's what you need to do." Da 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 da. Turns out he decided to handcuff me and put me in the back of a police car.
What? No. Okay.
And then proceed to tell me that my license plates were expired. And I said, "Well, here's the old, here's the old registration. You see, it's connected to me." He goes, "Oh, no. Well, we've got to do a few things." And so they proceeded to check my car for drugs. And I'm sitting in the back of the car, police car, like literally in tears, going, "Why is this necessary?" And again, I wasn't angry. I was more upset than angry. I just came from work. So then, to add insult to injury, they towed the car and then had me basically walk home with all my books and kids' homework, everything. And I'm just thinking, this is the kind of control that people have over you.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I mean, were they saying that you couldn't prove that you owned the car? Is that what they were trying to say?
They just said the registration was expired. They didn't give me a warning or anything. Just said, "Well, here we go. We're gonna, tow your car. You got to pick your car up here." Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the kind of stuff, man. Like it literally, Spike Lee said he's so surprised that black men have not gone off the deep end.
Yeah.
And when I mean that, I mean like I mean like Palestine.
Yeah.
Style,
it's funny. I just there was something that just popped up on my push notification. There was a 23-year-old kid who killed two folks and kidnapped. So I think his ex-girlfriend or whatever. They just caught him. Of course, he's a white kid, and I guess they caught him, booked him, detained him, or whatever. So a kid. I saw a post on it. Someone had a meme that Dylan Roof, who went into a black church and killed 6 folks, he was politely detained, handcuffed, and put into a police car. Whereas a guy who tried to pass off allegedly tried to pass off a phony $10 bill. That was the guy in Minnesota. He gets killed. So
that's what the Minnesota thing was about.
Yeah, basically someone called 911 to say it was they called it forgery, and I was like, forgery? I mean, forgery. You usually think about a bad check or something like that, but right. No, it was a phony $20 bill. And even when they stopped him, I still don't know if that's the same person. I mean, they just stopped a black person. I don't know if it's the
right.
black person, but right. Still, passing a fake $10 bill, you have to pin him on the ground, and there were 4 cops. Was that even necessary? Wow. So I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, and what can you do when we have a Justice Department that really doesn't care? At least in the Obama administration, you had Loretta Lynch and you had Eric Holder, who can have a Justice Department look at, let's say, Ferguson, Missouri, and say, hey, let's examine and find out if there's some pattern of bias, and we can, do some sort of an injunction. We don't have that at all. So this is,
and that's what's really scary is I think as you and me, as intelligent black men, we can sort of see through the loopholes or through the bullshit and say, here's what we would have done.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, I have a few friends who are lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
I can make a phone call in 2 seconds and figure out how to navigate through that.
Yeah.
But what about someone who is just a normal everyday person trying to make a living and do whatever?
Yeah.
They have no options. And so this is what's really scary about living while black.
Yeah, and the very fact that you have to live that way, I mean, it's unfortunate. And you think that America, like I have another podcast, I'm an American too, where I talk to people who come from other countries and get their perspective of American life. The fact that we call ourselves the greatest country on earth, and yet, if you're a black man, you have to live that way. You have to think twice or three times about getting into a car. Let me make sure that my registration's okay or whatever. Because if there's any excuse of stopping the car or whatever,
right.
or I was reading about an individual who had some marijuana, like I don't know, like a little bag, and
right.
this is in the deep South. This is in Texas, and they were going to arrest him because the maid found out he had it in a hotel, and they were going to book him for having, whatever marijuana. And, the laws in California are different than what's in Alabama. Or a cop will treat you differently in Oregon than they would in North Carolina. And that's not what America should be. I shouldn't have to have my freedom dictated by whatever state I'm in.
Right. I mean, again, like you have to check yourself no matter where you are
mm-hmm.
in the world, and again, I try to be as humble as I can. Whenever I travel, I try to be humble.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm falling into.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was an incident. My wife and I saw someone in France. We're in some part of France where there was an apartment, and this guy threw his cat out of the apartment window.
Wow.
And we literally saw it. We were taking a walk, and we saw the guy throw it out the window.
Mm.
So we called the gendarme, and they met us at this restaurant. And again, they were like kind of looking us up and down. Here we are, interracial couple.
Mm-hmm.
But they were smart enough to really assess the situation that here we are, just regular Americans. We saw something very distraught, and we're just whatever. Who knows what if that would have went down in Minnesota or Michigan or Alabama? What situation would it have been in?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about this whole Biden thing. I figured this would sort of, lighten things up because it's a dark thing, and it's I feel bad about any individual. I mean, we're lucky we're in California, so things aren't rosy, but we could be in Alabama, Mississippi. But the whole Biden thing. I mean, he has an interview with Charlemagne the God. And all of a sudden, Biden is talking about, well, hey, you have to think about who you need to vote for. You ain't black. And there's been blowback on that. But I want to get what did you think about that?
And I have to see the interview because I heard it third party, like,
mm-hmm.
I'm sure a lot of people did. First of all, I think he was trying to play up the whole kind of like connectivity.
Yeah, right.
And so I don't really look at like things out of context. I look at like the man and the history.
Mm-hmm.
So before I even knew who Biden was, before he even jumped in the whole Obama era, I knew him as a senator or as a congressman, and I said, I like that guy. He seems like he got some kind of swagger to him. And then when he jumped in the whole Obama administration, I thought, okay, Obama sees what I see. And now I feel what's happening is you got these factions of people. You got the Warren faction, you got the Bernie factions, you got all these other people who are sort of like trying to rip them to, I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't understand what we are trying to do right now. I'm trying to figure out if we want to beat Trump or do we want to kick ourselves in the ass?
Right. And that's a real good point because I'm a bit of a budding. Well, I like history. So I'm not going to call myself a historian, but this parallels 1968. You know, if we screw around and get into
Yeah.
these factions, you know, the women's factions, the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement,
Right.
and if someone brings up, oh, well, remember what Biden said about Anita Hill during the Clarence Thomas hearings,
Right.
we could screw up and we'll have Trump for 4 more years.
Right.
You know, right now it's binary. It's, you know, it's either Biden or it's Trump. I didn't have a problem with it at all. I mean, we've seen it with woke white, you know, folks who they want to say things to appease us. And
Right.
I think it's sort of endearing. I mean, a lot of times you can step on the third rail and say the wrong thing, or you can get into cliches or stereotypes. But, you know, Biden is trying to appeal to black voters, and it's nice to know that, you know, we mean so much. You know, he recognizes that he can't win unless we vote for him. So I didn't see a problem with it at all. Go ahead.
But see, and that is the game. That is what's happening. Is that the only way the other side can win is if we decide how we perceive what's happening. What's happening right now is someone is trying to flood, you know, our information, you know, highway with a bunch of crap trash.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say up and down, Tara Reid was right, Tara Reid was right. Look at what's coming out now.
Yeah.
Look at what's coming out now. You could say up and down, black people, da, 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't saying that 8 years ago, or for the last 8 years with Obama. He was with Obama.
Right. And the thing, you know, there's a friend of mine who we graduated from high school, Duke Ellington School of the Arts, and she's a firm believer that, you know, Tara Reid was sexually assaulted by Joe Biden. The thing, you know, Biden has been around for a long time. I think he's been a senator for several decades. I think maybe 20, 30 years. And she is the only woman who has ever said that he sexually harassed her. Now, he is touchy-feely. I mean, you know, he is very touchy-feely. Sometimes I can be touchy-feely. I got to learn, hey, I can't hug everybody and all that sort of stuff. Come on, baby, you know, and I mean, that's sort of the Deep South thing. And you can't do that.
Black in the Bay exclusive.
Right, exactly. But Tara Reid, I mean, so now she's in trouble because her lawyer has basically walked away from representing her because she lied on her resume, and she's been representing herself as an expert witness on several domestic violence cases. Wow. And now all of those cases have to be looked back again because she may have misrepresented herself in court. And she may have committed perjury. I mean, who knows if she, you know, said on the stand, yes, this is who I am and this is my education. So it's not just a little white lie, but she may have been engaging in perjury in court. Now, does that have anything to do with her possibly being sexually harassed? Well, is there any other evidence? I mean, is there anything else? And are we really going to damage ourselves as Democrats by, you know, looking at this woman and saying, well, you know, because of that, I'm not going to vote for Biden. Well, you got 4 more years of Trump. So
I think what we need to do is start going back to basics like science, common sense, statistical facts, and we need to really look at stuff that we understand as political ploys.
Yeah.
And this to me smells so damn stinky. This is a propaganda 101.
Yeah, because you have to ask yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just saying, if you ever seen politics, if you ever watched, I mean, for those who are just jumping into the whole political fray in 2000 whatever, go back to history and look at how politicians used to like pull each other through the mud.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You'll see posters after posters of like so and so smokes marijuana or you know whatever. I mean, it smells so thick.
Yeah.
This is a political ploy.
Yeah, there's a game that is played. I mean, you know, you talk about that. You can go back to Grover Cleveland and the political agendas. You know, Papa, Mama, where's Pa gone to the White House? Ha ha ha. You can look that up. Millennials will be like, Reg, what you talking about? Go look it up on Wikipedia. You'll figure it out. But in any case, yeah, you're absolutely right. This has been going on for a while. And while these games are being played, these political football games like Auburn and Alabama, rights are being trampled on. I mean, there are several women that I've talked to who are like, hey, Planned Parenthood, shops are being closed down at every state. I mean, if you're a young girl in, let's say, Alabama, and some boy has impregnated you, you may not be able to get an abortion because of what the Republicans are doing. If there's one thing that I can compliment the Republicans, and I do that rolling my eyes, they are loyal. They are very, very loyal. They will vote for one individual, and they won't let anything sidestep them. And we Democrats, because we have our own little agendas, the black agenda, the women agenda, the gay agenda, Latino, environmental agendas, we can allow that to separate ourselves and not, back the one candidate that will win. And it becomes a problem.
Have you heard of the Lincoln Project?
No, tell me about it.
Well, it's a group of Republicans who are actually going after Trump. And I think it's the LincolnProject.org or .com, and they've actually posted all these like kind of manifestos of like why this guy needs to go down. And I think it's headed by what's her name's husband?
Conway? No, George Conway?
Yeah, George Conway.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. I hope it works.
So, I mean, there are some factions of Republicans who are starting to step away from his, nonsense and say, this is ridiculous. I mean, the fact that he's talking about mail-in ballots are going to be illegal. When did this happen?
Yeah, well, I mean, even I think today he talking about signing an executive order to stop Twitter or to stop social media. I mean, how in the hell is he going to do that? I mean, he's just flipping out. He's just totally flipping out. And this mask war, it's like, well, I don't know why Biden is wearing a mask. Well, all of us should be wearing a mask. And why aren't you wearing a mask? Because of this macho, this it's very John Wayne type, macho man. I don't need to, do any of this stuff.
Wait, Reggie, it's fine. Look, he don't have to wear a mask.
What, are you wishing him to be dead? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying I support him not wearing a mask. You can breathe that fresh Corona air. Breathe it in.
Yeah. And if someone sneezes on, oh well.
Yeah. You can sniff all that air you want.
Oh my God.
That stale White House air.
Yeah, exactly. I had a question for you. Have you been watching? Did you watch The Last Dance? The Michael Jordan documentary.
Yeah, also known as Corona Distraction 2020.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it took me right down memory lane. I remember I broke up with a girlfriend because of Michael Jordan.
What?
I was in my last year at NYU, and I had this girlfriend who was in high school. Shame on me, robbing the cradle. Any case, I didn't know that until, she told me later. Anyway, I had this.
We've been there.
Yeah, so I had this. We had this deal where I would pick her up for night school because she was taking night school at Washington Irving High School in New York. So in any case, it was around the time of the finals between the Bulls and the Lakers, Magic versus Jordan. And it was really my first time watching him, and she would call me up. She was like, hey, you picking me up? And I'm like, no, I'll pick you up later. I didn't tell her that I was watching the thing. And I did this for like a couple of times. Then it was like game 3. And she's like, okay, this is the third time you're not picking me up. So what's going on? There's got to be a girl. Who's in there? Who's in your apartment? And I'm like, nothing, nowhere. Listen, I don't care what you do. She was getting on my nerves then, and I just boom. So I joke to say that Michael, I chose Michael Jordan over my girlfriend at the time. We got back together again, but it was such an incredible moment, just watching him in all his glory, and then of course the entire '90s. I mean, by the time he picked up his last championship, I was already here in my second year working for the DA's office in '98. Yeah. But it's interesting now. I mean, you've got Scottie Pippen flipping out, and you've got Isaiah Thomas like, well, why didn't you pick me for the dream team? I mean, it's amazing how these arguments. I mean, why are people so? Why are you tripping because Michael yelled at you or for what happened in the past?
I'm actually. It's funny because it took me back to a time where there were so many things going on in my life, like with music and like creativity. And I remember like, the playoffs or the regular season was sort of a blur, but then the playoffs were the big moments that I always knew I was sitting down and watching, especially during that time with Jordan. And I just remember that time. It was so vivid when it showed. Okay, I forget what it was. The game we played against Utah,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember I was working with my group Midnight Voices, I think, and we were working on a tour. We were doing some music at that point, and recorded the album. And it's so vivid, like those moments of like where I was when he was doing his thing.
Yeah, yeah,
So those were really good, memories to me of like the Bulls just trying to come back and do it one more time, and again, I had to go back and watch some Warriors games just because it was like that's how I felt, watching this new, the Warriors, because it was like those were our Chicago Bulls.
yeah. Well, I mean, you say were. I think still are. I think that it's. I feel bad for LeBron James because 2020 is supposed to be his day, his moment to win at least for the Lakers, and of course everything's been put on hold. But I'm hoping Steph is healthy and Clay is healthy, and
Yeah.
so we may see the band back again.
What do you think's going to happen? What do you think they're going to just pass this year up, or what?
I think so. I mean, I've heard that people are talking about, well, they have to start the league, they have to start the NBA again and just go straight into the playoffs and
Right.
anyone who can make it in. But that would be so unfair. And also,
Well,
who's going to go to the games?
Well, so this is what they're talking about doing is creating whoever the teams are that are in the eighth seed, so the 16 teams
Mm-hmm.
that are in the top eight, basically mix them up. So you would have one being the Lakers and 16 being whoever. So it would be like, say, well, it wouldn't even be in the West and East, it'd just be whatever. So you have Lakers versus Brooklyn Nets.
Oh, wow.
So it would be intermingled with the West and the East. So it wouldn't even be like, here's the West, here's the East. It'd just be like, whoever that bracket is, you're going against each other.
Yeah, and I mean, even let's say that happens and someone wins the championship. Won't that championship have an asterisk because, let's say one team that didn't play in the playoffs never had the chance because they never had the chance to build their record up because
Right.
of the COVID-19 thing.
I think there's maybe one or two teams that were like maybe 3 games behind
Mm-hmm.
that could have technically, like, if they had been strong enough, they could have won it. But then there was a guy saying, "Oh well, we're in different times now." I'm like, well, wait, this wouldn't have happened if we had 2 more months or 3 more months of a season.
Right. Right. That's exactly right. So.
But it's interesting, man. I honestly feel for me, I feel selfish. I mean, I would love to see it because it'd be a great distraction to have the playoffs come back. But as far as safety and making sure everybody get tested, I don't know if they could do it.
Yeah, I mean, you'd hate to be cheering somebody on, then you hear a news report that somebody in the stands died because they got COVID-19.
Right.
And and also we're sort of spoiled. I mean, in America, we're used to doing things and let's say going to, like, I'm spoiled. I'm used to going to Starbucks. I'm used to going to the movies. I'm used to going to this. What's the big deal spending a couple of months not doing the things that I usually would do,
Right.
especially when I can do it a little bit later on? I mean, sometimes we have to sacrifice. I think about my grandfather, like back during the Great Depression and how many stores were shut down or whatever because of that. And
Wow.
that was a generation that just endured. And I think that we can do the same thing.
So go to that. What do you feel like you missed right now since we've been on lockdown?
Well, I was supposed to. I mean, I missed out on some money. I had a $1,000 job doing a theater thing.
Wow.
It was a group. What was the Plethos Productions? They were going to do Tiny Beautiful Things at the Douglas Morrison, and just when we were in rehearsal, boom, everything got shut down. And I have so many theater friends who, they were supposed to be the star of a show, or they were supposed to, they were going to pick up some money, like equity actors.
Mm.
all over. Like even Broadway actors have been shut down, and it's affecting their money. So I lost out. I mean, they paid me for the little bit of time that we did during rehearsal, but $1,000 became $300, and I was like, well,
Right.
it is what it is. I mean, you can what can you do?
Yeah.
It is interesting. I mean, one thing that I'll advertise. So there'll be a play reading, a Zoom play reading of one of my one-act plays, and that'll
Oh
be
no.
this coming Sunday. So
Oh
anyone who's looking at this, and I'll post this on Facebook and also on YouTube. If you're interested in listening to this will be Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's a
nice.
play that I wrote called Judicial Process, and it deals with the Trump administration and ICE and illegal immigration. And it's a adaptation of Bertolt Brecht's Fear and Misery in the Third Reich.
Wow.
So, in any case, that's one of the cool things. So, yeah, there are things that I miss. I miss going to the movies. I miss going to Starbucks. I miss just going out. Thank goodness. So I got to talk to you about this date that I had on Valentine's Day. I had a Valentine's Day date, and
Well,
things are going
before
real
COVID.
well. But
Pre-COVID. Pre-COVID.
right, exactly. Pre-COVID. That's what I was saying, because if COVID had happened a month earlier, had Trump told us what was happening when we should have known, then not
Wow.
only would we not have had 100,000 people died, but well, I would have lost out on the date. But that's another thing.
Wow.
But it's so encouraging to see artists, use Zoom. I mean, Zoom is making a killing. Zoom, the application we're using now, I mean, I bet they're making millions of dollars because everyone
Yeah,
is
man.
using Zoom.
I mean, my kids are using it for school. My wife is using it for her you know, her because she's a college advisor, so she's working with her students, and it's crazy, man.
Yeah. But artists, we figure out a way to, to keep busy. If you're secluded, I'm sure you've been writing and, pondering, new ideas and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
with Zoom and with social media, I mean, think of if COVID-19 had happened, let's say 2 decades ago, before the internet. Well, actually,
Oh
it would have
man,
to be 25 years ago.
we would be screwed.
Right, exactly.
I mean, we would basically just be like shelled up in a house trying to figure out how to talk to people.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure we have Nintendo and Sega, playing that, but it's nice to have the internet. It's nice to have YouTube, and you can just
Yeah.
splurge on Netflix and all that sort of stuff.
Wow. Yeah, it would have been a whole new. I mean, probably back then. What's his name? Mr. Apple. Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs would have figured it out.
Yeah. So the kids haven't driven you crazy? I mean, are they?
No, I mean, we're basically worried about their welfare, their mental health, and I think we try to do as many. I actually just ordered a dartboard,
Mhm.
one of a real authentic dartboard, because I was like, I want to keep their spirits high and have them have fun. And so today we played in the sprinklers and we had water balloons, and
Oh, nice.
I mean, I think it's part of like being a kid is just to be a kid,
Yeah.
And
I think kids.
my mom and dad were probably doing the same thing, we're doing. It's distract them with fun stuff.
Yeah. I think kids are very adaptive. They just know how to deal and to not, for the most part, freak out. I'm sure there are some kids who are having
Yeah.
a real hard time, but I
My,
think a lot.
my daughter actually, we talk about, so I'll try to say something positive, like, oh, I found like something positive happened today, and my daughter will just basically say, can we not talk about this? And I could sense like she's thinking about it a lot. And so I try not to inundate her with anything that's happening out there. And I don't watch the media that much either. But if I see something positive happening, like that's changing, I'll say it. They're gonna go into phase 2, whatever the situation is.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do your kids? I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I was very curious, and I would read the newspapers, and if a tragic, let's say, an event happened, like we talked about the Atlanta child murders. That was a big event that happened during my lifetime, and it really affected me. And I had a lot of conversations with my parents, like, "Oh my God, is somebody going to kill me?" Although it happened in Atlanta, But do your kids talk to you? I mean, do they absorb the news? Like, let's say black, police violence and all that sort of stuff. Do they have those conversations with your
We
kids?
we we've mostly talked about the history of black people, and like they know that I went to a predominantly white school and I dealt with all the kind of biases and racism and stuff, and so they understand the history, but they don't really know what's happening right now in terms of like police brutality.
Okay.
And I think when they hit maybe middle school, I'll start to kind of creep in all the sort of stuff that's been happening. But I think right now, like they're 8 and 10,
Okay.
so I think right now we're still talking about like sort of the unfairnesses that's happened in previous history. And then as we get deeper, I'll start to say, it's going to be sort of a hard road in these areas for you, and I want you to be prepared.
Yeah. I think.
I think the one thing parents don't want is for their children to be bitter or to be angry. They want them to understand, here are the things we need to do to protect ourselves. But again, it's just a really rough conversation to have.
Yeah, no, I think you're smart. I think that's exactly right. You don't want to, have your children bitter. I didn't know if they were curious enough, but I'm sure that they are. I really do think that, especially here in the Bay Area, because it's so liberal, we're sort of insulated from these events happening. I mean, there are the occasional barbecue Becky's and the cops, but it's way different from, let's say, the Deep South, where you're really in the thick of it. So
yeah,
so that's.
I mean, we were in Frankfort, Michigan. We were my father-in-law has a cabin over there, and this is a few years back. This is before, I think, maybe 2016. And I remember we saw like a Trump, vote for Trump sign on a truck. And we were also at this like kind of like old school, like, it was a heartland. So it was like, predominantly, Midwesterners. And we were at like a 4th of July, like beach, kind of fireworks show. And folks being cool with us, I think, and again, they see us and they don't really know how to figure it out. They see a beautiful interracial family. I mean, what you gonna do with that?
Right.
What negativity can you do if you see some beautiful kids, a handsome guy like me, my Vogue magazine wife? I mean, what are you doing with that?
That's exactly right. I imagine your wife. I'm sure you guys wish that you guys were in Paris. I'm sure
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly, we've been talking about it. We actually talked about it today. Like, what would life look like if we could move somewhere else? And I think we'd be fine. I think, as far as work, it'd definitely be kind of a rough thing. I mean, I could definitely, if I could convince my boss to let me work from Europe, that would be amazing. But I think for us, I don't know, man. I mean, we're from the Bay, so it's like, the Bay is a little bit different kind of flow. But the world, if the world becomes Trump again, I don't know.
Yeah, it's rough. I mean, sure, we're insulated in the Bay, but also it's really expensive. I mean, I don't know if it would be cheaper if you were to live in France. But even
Right.
I mean, I'm at the age now where I'm getting close to retirement age, so I'm thinking, okay, where else can I live where I can actually hold on to my money, but also not flip out because, like I think I told you I had an ex-girlfriend and she was like, oh, let's live in Texas. I've got friends in Texas. I'm like, nope, no way. Not happening.
Canada, I'm always curious about Canada.
Yeah.
I think Canada would be a fun place to go.
But God, the cold. Can you deal with the cold weather?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, kind of definitely different environmental weather there.
Yeah, dealing with the thing. And we should tell folks about Black. Is your last album Blacklandia? For those who don't know, Will, you're a recording artist, and we should have played "Hold You Tight." What you did in the '90s.
Well, you can pick up Blacklandia. It's kind of like what's happening right now with all the craziness and anger. We talk about history of like from Middle Passage to now. But I just came out with a new album called Pangea, which is my kind of answer to the pandemic, which is more about like the world coming together and colliding rather than
Yeah.
separate, you know. And then in June, I have a new album called the Love Album, which has got a bunch of good jazz, some jazz tunes and jazz soul. So I'm getting ready for the summer, baby. Getting that love to start
Right
coming
on.
through.
And,
So
and I love the title Pangea because for those that don't know, the world was actually, all of the continents had joined together, I think, I don't know, millions of years ago, and it was a supercontinent called Pangea. So
exactly.
I love the analogy of worlds, continents coming together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But so what? So you got your play going on? Do you have any other things you want to work on?
I'm just shooting things out. I mean, shame on me. I've had so much time in seclusion where I could have been, writing and doing all sorts of things, and I've just been vegging out, playing a lot of Doom. I don't know. I don't know if you're. I don't know if you're into first-person shooters. Do you do that?
I miss Doom.
Hey, load it up.
Doom is old school, man.
Yeah, but I mean, it's funny because there's this cottage industry where people are creating new levels. They're creating new maps, and they're uploading it to sites. So it's not like I'm playing the exact same Doom, stuff that I played 25 years ago.
What system do you play on?
My Mac. I just load it up onto my Mac, and there are a couple of applications like there's like QZ Doom, and there's PR Boom and other things like that. I use QZ Doom, and it's fun. Like every day, like I'll jump on YouTube and I'll say, okay, what's the newest WAD? What's the newest thing being played? And then I'll download it, and then I'll try to go through a level, get upset, throw the remote control, and then get over myself. And I should be creating. I mean, you've been creating, and of course, you're a dad. You have to be a little bit more productive than the bachelor that I am.
So, oh man, yeah. My son and I actually just did his space project because he's doing a project. He has to figure out if he's doing live action or stop motion or whatever. So we decided to do live action, and so behind me I put a green screen. I ordered a space outfit for him, and so he was like, doing this whole thing. So we have to edit it tomorrow.
Oh, nice! That should be
fun.
So
yeah, I've been doing a lot more projects with my son. I think I'm really excited. That's one thing that came out of it. Is like he's learning all about technology and how to do camera stuff. It's fun.
Yeah, the millennials. I guess they're called the post millennials because I guess those who were born in 2000 or later. But they're learning the technology way better than we are, and so it'll be exciting to see the future and what they do with all of this stuff. So that'll be.
We just had to have a serious conversation with my daughter about internet, weirdos, and say like, don't let anybody, if you're talking, because she does this Roblox online with her best friends, and then she was saying, oh yeah, one of the people on Roblox said this to us, and we're like, who? And so we had to say, don't let anybody talk to you, engage with you that you don't know. If someone is asking you questions, you come see us. And she didn't understand why. And so we had to kind of dig deeper and say, well, there's a lot of weirdos out there who want to get your information.
Yeah, that's very, very important. Do they deal with cyberbullying at all? I mean, I wonder about that with these young kids.
That actually happened. It actually happened early on when they were doing the Zoom classes. One of the boys in her class was sort of being a little bit too aggressive, and so my daughter took it upon herself to say, let's kick him out of the room. And so then one of the girls got mad because she liked him, and she's like, we're going to kick you out. So it became this weird kind of infighting thing, and so the head of the school had to like jump in and say, across the board, there'd be no bullying, there'd be no, tomfoolery, but my daughter stood for herself because she felt the boy was being a little bit too aggressive in the room. So, again, we have to explain what that meant and that it was okay, but you have to talk to an adult before you do that. So
Well, good for your daughter. I mean, that's to be assertive, especially for a woman. It's best to learn earlier than later. So, and I'm sure your wife is telling her that as well. So it's good that she has that.
Oh yeah, and again, like we've been parenting, at a very smooth pace, and now all of a sudden my daughter's jumping into the preteen, the tween mode, and I'm like, oh god, now we're gonna be dealing with all this other stuff.
Right, exactly. All right, man. Well, it's 8:03, so I think we've hit the 1 hour mark. So,
Yes.
shall we shut it down? I'm so glad. Good to see you again. And
First episode back, we did it.
yeah. And we got to bring a guest on. I tried in vain to bring at least 2 or 3 guests on, but people have been busy. And
Well, check this out. Friends, people out there watching this show, if you are an expert, a doctor, a lawyer, or a policeman, or whatever, and you want to talk about what's happening right now, black people in the Bay or in the world, send us a DM and we will put you on the show.
absolutely, we want to hear from you. And even if you're, you just have these issues. Let's say we're talking about these issues, and you're like, oh, I want to jump on in. We'd love to hear from you, and definitely hit us up. So,
even just what kind of food you're making, like if you're a chef.
Yeah. Hey, what about those pies? Are you still making pies? Are you still making pies, Will? Will?
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
I just picked up more. I mean, I didn't talk about this, but my dad passed away in May.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a cousin friend of mine about like the ceremony we're going to try to have in about a month or two. And so I said, well, I can bring pies, so I'm going to bring my sweet potato pies, and they're bringing, tons of food and stuff like that. So we're planning to have a Hammond reunion soon. So, but I'll send you a pie, man.
Yeah, I definitely, because that's right down my alley. I remember my grandmother would always make these, sweet potato pies and all sorts of stuff. So I'm dying to have that.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, and so sad to hear about your dad. We've talked about this already, so I didn't want to.
Yeah. Well, I'll share a song next episode.
Absolutely, please do.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, this is Black in the Bay, and we have the video podcast, and we'll have the video on YouTube, and of course, I'll post it, on all of these sites like SoundCloud, but also the audio part we're going to have on SoundCloud. We'll have it on Spotify. We'll have it on the Apple Podcast app. The audio quality won't be as great as before because we're not using the professional mics that we used beforehand, but it'll still be doable. Be sure to hit us up. I'm going to play our outside music. Will, I will see you, I think, next week, hopefully.
Good to see you, my brother.
All right, man. And everybody, stay strong, stay healthy, stay inside, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.